The alarm clock shatters the pre-dawn silence at 3:45 a.m., December 7th, 1941. Two young American soldiers stir inside a canvas tent pitched on a windswept ridge 526 feet above the Pacific Ocean. The air carries the scent of tropical vegetation mixed with diesel fuel from the massive trucks parked nearby. Trucks that house America's most secret weapon. Private Joseph Lockard, 19 years old, rubs sleep from his eyes and reaches for his .45 caliber pistol. Born in the coal country of Pennsylvania, Lockard has already earned a reputation as the best radar operator in the signal company aircraft warning Hawaii. His bunkmate, Private George Elliott Jr., 22, from New Jersey, stretches nervously. Elliott has only 3 months of radar experience, barely enough to understand the green blips that dance across the 5-inch oscilloscope screen. Together, they unlock the massive mobile radar unit, a state-of-the-art SCR-270 that represents the bleeding edge of 1941 technology. The antenna tower stretches 45 feet into the Hawaiian sky, its 9 metal bays designed to bounce radio waves off objects up to 150 miles away. In all of Hawaii, only 6 of these revolutionary machines exist. For the entire Pacific Fleet, there's exactly 1 spare tube. I still need practice reading the scope, Elliott admits as they power up the equipment. The trucks hum to life, diesel generators feeding electricity to vacuum tubes that glow like amber lanterns in the darkness. Through the truck's open sides, they can see the Pacific stretching endlessly toward Japan, 4,000 miles away. Lockard takes his position at the oscilloscope, watching the thin white line sweep across the green screen. Elliott sits beside him with plotting board and logbook, ready to track anything that might appear. Their job is simple: detect aircraft approaching Oahu and report them to the information center at Fort Shafter, 50 miles away. At 6:54 a.m., the phone rings. "Shut down the radar unit," comes the order from Fort Shafter. "Your duty ends at 7 o'clock. But Elliott has other plans. "I still want instruction on the oscilloscope," he insists. Lockard, always willing to help a trainee, agrees to keep the system running past their official duty time. At exactly 7:02 a.m., something appears on their screen that neither man has ever seen before. "What's this?" Elliott asks, pointing at the oscilloscope. A massive white blip dominates the display, not the usual small dot representing a single aircraft, but a formation so large it defies explanation. How could these 2 young soldiers know they were about to witness the largest air attack in American history? And how would their technology, primitive by today's standards but revolutionary in 1941, evolve from this moment of failure into the invisible shield that would ultimately defeat Japanese air power in the Pacific? The largest blip either of us had ever seen on an oscilloscope. That's how Elliott would later describe the radar return that appeared 137 miles northeast of Oahu that Sunday morning. Lockard immediately suspects equipment malfunction. He runs through a series of diagnostic checks, testing the transmitter, checking the receiver, examining the antenna connections. Everything functions perfectly. The 2 soldiers calculate the approaching formation's speed and bearing. The aircraft are flying directly toward them at approximately 180 miles per hour, coming from 3 degrees east of due north. In 1941, this represents an impossible sight. No friendly formation has ever appeared this large on their primitive radar screen. "Don't be crazy," Lockard laughs when Elliott suggests calling the information center. Our problem ended at 7 o'clock. But Elliott persists, his New Jersey stubbornness overriding military protocol. After intense discussion, Lockard relents. "Well, go ahead and send it in if you like." Elliott tries the tactical telephone line. No answer. The 5 plotters at Fort Shafter's information center have left for breakfast. He switches to the administrative line, reaching switchboard operator Private Joseph McDonald. "I need someone in charge to call us back as soon as possible," Elliott explains nervously. describing the massive radar return approaching Oahu. This is unlike anything we've seen before. At 7:20 a.m., the phone rings. Lieutenant Kermit Tyler, a 28-year-old pilot learning fighter direction procedures, has been located. This is only Tyler's second shift in the information center. He's essentially as green as Elliot when it comes to radar operations. Lockard takes the call, explaining the unprecedented radar contact. But Tyler remembers something from his drive to Fort Shafter that morning. Hawaiian radio station KGMB had been playing music without commercial interruption. A friend had once told him, "This happens when B-17 bombers fly in from the mainland, using the radio signal for navigation." "Well, don't worry about it," Tyler tells the radar operators. Lockard wants to shut down immediately, but Elliot insists they continue tracking the formation. I still wanted instruction on using the oscilloscope, and the incoming flight presented a perfect opportunity. For the next 17 minutes, they watch the massive blip grow larger as it approaches Oahu. The formation maintains course and speed, now clearly visible as the largest air attack anyone has ever tracked on radar. At 7:39 a.m., the aircraft disappear behind the mountains surrounding Opana Ridge, vanishing into the radar's permanent blind spot just 22 miles from the coastline. Elliot and Lockard pack up their equipment, waiting for the truck that will take them back to Kawailoa Base Camp for breakfast. They have no idea they've just tracked 183 Japanese aircraft, 49 high-level bombers, 40 torpedo bombers, 51 dive bombers, and 43 fighters, approaching Pearl Harbor for the most devastating surprise attack in American history. Halfway back to camp, they pass a stake-body truck speeding toward Opana Point, filled with soldiers wearing World War I doughboy helmets and carrying full combat gear. Elliot and Lockard honk their horn and slow down, trying to ask what's happening. The soldiers blow their horn in response and race past without stopping. At Kawailoa, they find soldiers gathered in clusters, staring at the sky. Black smoke billows on the horizon, rising from the direction of Pearl Harbor. The base radio crackles with emergency broadcasts. "Air raid Pearl Harbor. This is no drill." Lockard and I looked at each other, Elliot later recalled. At that moment, we knew that the flight we tracked at Opana was the Japanese attack force. The two radar operators have just experienced America's greatest intelligence failure. Despite having revolutionary early warning technology and 55 minutes of advance notice, the attack proceeds exactly as planned. Over 2,400 Americans die that morning. The Pacific Fleet lies in ruins. But this moment of failure contains the seeds of transformation. The same radar technology that failed to prevent Pearl Harbor will evolve into something the Japanese never anticipated: an integrated defense network so sophisticated that by 1945, their aircraft won't be able to approach American forces without immediate detection and interception. The primitive SCR-270 that Elliot and Lockard operated, with its 5-inch green screen and manual plotting, represents just the beginning. Within 4 years, American radar will undergo a revolution that transforms it from a curiosity dismissed by senior officers as an elaborate toy into the invisible shield that dominates Pacific skies. Japanese pilots who attacked Pearl Harbor with complete surprise will find themselves flying into carefully orchestrated defensive patterns guided by radar operators who can track dozens of aircraft simultaneously. The same technology that allowed 183 enemy aircraft to approach undetected will eventually make it impossible for even a single Japanese plane to reach American ships without running a gauntlet of radar-directed fighters and proximity-fused anti-aircraft shells. But how did America accomplish this transformation? How did the nation that missed the most important radar warning in history build the most sophisticated air defense network the world had ever seen? The answer lies in the bitter lessons learned from Elliot and Lockard's experience. and in the determination to ensure that no American force would ever again be caught by surprise. April 16, 1945. The destroyer USS Laffey cuts through calm Pacific waters 30 miles northwest of Okinawa, her radar masts rotating endlessly against the dawn sky. In her Combat Information Center, radar operators hunched over glowing screens represent the evolution of everything Elliott and Lockard pioneered 4 years earlier. Gone are the primitive 5-inch oscilloscopes with their single green line. Laffey's CIC teams monitor multiple radar systems simultaneously: air search, surface search, and fire control radars that can track dozens of targets while automatically directing guns to intercept them. The ship carries 300 rounds of revolutionary VT proximity fuse ammunition, shells equipped with tiny radar sets that explode when they detect aircraft nearby. At 8:08 a.m., Laffey's air search radar detects the impossible: more incoming aircraft than the operators can count, approaching from the north. These represent the spearhead of Kikusui No. 3, the third massive kamikaze attack on American forces off Okinawa. A total of 165 suicide aircraft and 150 conventional attackers are converging on the American fleet. But this time, the story unfolds differently than Pearl Harbor. Request immediate combat air patrol. Laffey's fighter direction officer calls to escort carrier Shamrock Bay. 4 FM-2 Wildcats scramble immediately, racing toward the destroyer at maximum speed. Additional combat air patrol launches from multiple carriers, a coordinated response impossible in 1941, but routine by 1945. Commander Frederick Becton, Laffey's commanding officer, studies the radar displays with calm professionalism. A veteran of 4 previous battle engagements, Becton has learned that radar-guided defenses work best when ships maintain steady courses to maximize their firepower rather than attempting radical evasive maneuvers. At 8:30 a.m., the first Japanese aircraft appear visually, a single Aichi D-3A Val dive bomber conducting reconnaissance. Laffey's twin 5-inch gun mounts, guided by radar fire control, immediately take the aircraft under fire. The Val jettisons its bomb and flees, but the message is clear. American ships now possess radar-directed gunfire accurate enough to threaten aircraft at maximum visual range. 4 more Vals approach in coordinated attack formation, splitting into pairs to attack from multiple angles. This represents classic kamikaze tactics designed to overwhelm primitive radar systems like the SCR-270, but Laffey's integrated defense network handles multiple targets with mechanical precision. Mount 51 and 52. Commence firing. Radar-directed 5-inch guns track the first pair of attackers. VT proximity fuses detonate shells precisely when they reach optimal range, creating devastating fragmentation patterns that no pilot can evade. The first Val disintegrates at 9,000 yards. The second explodes at 3,000 yards. Mount 53 engages the Vals circling to attack from astern, hitting one with a VT-fused shell at 3,000 yards. The damaged aircraft's landing gear catches a wave, and it crashes into the sea. The fourth Val, crossing from starboard to port, runs into concentrated fire from both Laffey and support craft LCS-51. All 4 attacking aircraft are destroyed before reaching attack range. American fighters now arrive over the battle zone. 12 Marine Corps F-4U Corsairs from VMF 441, Blackjacks, launched from captured Yantan Airfield on Okinawa, join 4 Navy Wildcats already engaging Japanese formations. The Corsairs operate under radio direction from Laffey's CIC, which vectors them toward incoming raids using radar information impossible to obtain in 1941. For 80 minutes, Laffey fights the most intensive kamikaze attack ever recorded. 22 Japanese aircraft attempt to crash into the destroyer, supported by conventional bombers dropping free-fall weapons. But the ship's radar-guided defense systems extract an enormous toll. 8 Japanese aircraft shot down by Laffey's guns, 6 more kamikazes hitting only after suffering severe damage that reduces their accuracy, and 17 additional aircraft destroyed by radar-vectored fighters. The contrast with Pearl Harbor becomes starkly apparent, where Elliott and Lockard could only watch helplessly as 183 aircraft approached undetected. Laffey's operators actively coordinate a defensive battle involving dozens of aircraft, multiple ships, and integrated fire control systems. When kamikazes do penetrate the defensive perimeter, radar-guided proximity fuses dramatically improve the effectiveness of anti-aircraft fire. Performance by all hands was outstanding, Commander Becton later reports. Gunnery personnel demonstrated cool-headed resourcefulness and continued to deliver accurate fire throughout the action, often in local control. But Laffey represents just one example of America's radar revolution. Across the Pacific, American task forces now operate behind defensive screens that Japanese air power cannot penetrate. Task Force 58's fast carriers employ radar picket lines, destroyer formations positioned 50 to 60 miles from the main fleet, equipped with the latest radar systems and assigned dedicated fighter squadrons. These picket ships detect incoming raids before they can approach the carriers, vectoring fighters to intercept formations while they remain concentrated and vulnerable. When kamikaze tactics disperse attacking aircraft to overwhelm defensive systems, the Americans simply deploy more radar-equipped ships to handle multiple simultaneous tracks. Vice Admiral John McCain's carriers now carry 73 fighters each, nearly double their 1941 complement, specifically to maintain continuous combat air patrol under radar direction. The Big Blue Blanket of radar-guided fighters sweeps over Japanese airfields, prevents suicide aircraft from even launching their attacks. Most devastating of all, American ships now fire VT proximity fused ammunition that turns every anti-aircraft shell into a radar-guided weapon. These revolutionary projectiles, carrying tiny radar sets that detonate when aircraft approach within lethal range, increase the effectiveness of anti-aircraft fire by 300 to 500% over conventional shells. Japanese pilots, trained to expect the ineffective anti-aircraft fire they encountered early in the war, find themselves flying into perfectly timed explosive patterns that seem to anticipate their exact position. Captain Sei Sakita, who led one of the first successful kamikaze attacks against carriers Franklin and Belleau Wood in October 1944, represents the Japanese perspective on this technological transformation. Early kamikaze attacks achieved success rates exceeding 34%, devastating effectiveness that shocked American commanders. But by Okinawa, radar-guided defenses have reduced kamikaze success rates to just 12%, despite increasingly desperate Japanese tactics. The invisible revolution that began with Elliott and Lockard's primitive SCR-270 has culminated in integrated defense networks that make Pearl Harbor-style surprise attacks impossible. American radar operators, once helpless observers tracking incoming attacks, now serve as the nerve center of coordinated defensive systems that can engage multiple threats simultaneously while directing fighters, ships, and anti-aircraft guns with mechanical precision. The same technology that failed America on December 7, 1941, has become Japan's worst nightmare, an electronic shield that transforms the Pacific into an American lake where no enemy aircraft can operate without immediate detection and engagement. By war's end, Japanese air power, once capable of ranging freely across the Pacific to deliver devastating surprise attacks, has been reduced to desperate kamikaze missions that achieve minimal success against radar-guided defenses. The transformation is complete. America's greatest intelligence failure has become the foundation for the most sophisticated air defense network in military history. Joseph Lockard never forgot the morning he tracked Pearl Harbor's attackers to their target. awarded the Distinguished Service Medal, and hailed as the Hero of Pearl Harbor by the Associated Press, he used his radar expertise to serve throughout the Pacific War as a commissioned officer. The scared 19-year-old private, who desperately tried to warn Fort Shafter, became a seasoned radar instructor, training thousands of operators in the technology that would dominate Pacific skies. George Elliott Jr. served in the Army until 1945, then took his electronics knowledge to New Jersey Bell Telephone, where he worked for 33 years before retiring. The man who insisted on extra oscilloscope training that fateful December morning helped build America's post-war telecommunications network. Technology directly descended from wartime radar innovations. Even Kermit Tyler, the officer who dismissed their crucial warning, completed a distinguished military career. Despite being called before multiple boards of inquiry, Tyler was cleared of any wrongdoing and eventually retired as a lieutenant colonel. He later reflected that his Pearl Harbor experience taught him the critical importance of taking every radar contact seriously, a lesson America absorbed completely. But the most profound transformation occurred in American military doctrine itself. The radar networks that saved ships like USS Laffey became the foundation for integrated air defense systems that protected American forces throughout the Pacific Campaign. By 1945, Japanese pilots faced an invisible web of detection that made surprise attacks virtually impossible. Radar picket ships, combat information centers, and proximity-fused ammunition created defensive capabilities that Elliott and Lockard could never have imagined. Consider the numbers. During the 4 months following the first kamikaze attacks in October 1944, American radar-guided defenses reduced Japanese attack effectiveness from devastating early war successes to manageable tactical problems. By Okinawa, radar-directed fighter interceptions and anti-aircraft fire were destroying Japanese formations before they could reach their targets. The VT proximity fuse alone, essentially a miniature radar system inside every anti-aircraft shell, represented a technological leap comparable to the difference between Elliott's primitive oscilloscope and modern air traffic control systems. These radar-guided projectiles meant that American gunners no longer needed direct hits to destroy attacking aircraft. Near misses became lethal, turning the sky around American ships into a deadly mesh of precisely timed explosions. Perhaps most importantly, America learned to integrate its radar technology with human decision-making. The isolation that doomed Elliott and Lockard's warning, two young soldiers with revolutionary information but no institutional support, was replaced by sophisticated command structures where radar intelligence flowed instantly to commanders who understood its significance. Task Force 58's combat information centers represented the culmination of this evolution. Where Elliott and Lockard struggled to convince a single lieutenant that their contact was significant, CIC teams by 1945 coordinated responses involving hundreds of aircraft, dozens of ships, and thousands of personnel, all guided by radar information processed and distributed in real time. The technological lineage runs directly from Opana Ridge to modern missile defense systems. The same principles that protected Allied ships in 1945, early warning, integrated response, and automated engagement, form the backbone of today's air defense networks. Every airport control tower, every military radar installation, every missile defense system traces its heritage to the lessons learned from America's Pearl Harbor awakening. Modern conflicts continue to validate the fundamental insight Elliott and Lockard's experience provided. In warfare, information dominance determines survival. The nation that can see farther, process threats faster, and coordinate responses more effectively holds decisive advantages that no amount of individual courage can overcome. Today, as potential adversaries develop new methods to attack American forces, the same cycle continues. Advanced radar systems, satellite surveillance, and computer-guided defenses represent the direct descendants of the primitive SCR-270 that two young soldiers operated on a Hawaiian mountaintop in 1941. The invisible shield that began with Elliott and Lockard's ignored warning has evolved into America's most enduring strategic advantage, the ability to see threats coming and respond with overwhelming technological superiority. From Pearl Harbor's devastating surprise to Okinawa's successful defense, America's radar revolution demonstrates how nations can transform their greatest failures into their most powerful capabilities. Two young soldiers tracking blips on a green screen could never have imagined they were witnessing the birth of the electronic age, an age where information itself became the ultimate weapon. The next time you see aircraft safely landing at any airport, guided by radar controllers who can track dozens of flights simultaneously, remember Elliott and Lockard, and how America learned to turn its moment of greatest vulnerability into the foundation of unmatched technological supremacy.